Hello, my name is Caroline Nettle and this is the second video in the series called Recovering from Addictions, and today the topic I would like to address is called denial. And I did hear somebody once say that denial is don't even know that I'm lying, and that just made me chuckle because I want to start with where we are at in society. Now, my childhood started in 1966, so I'm 53 this year, and I'm pretty sure that I'm not that unusual in the following, and that is that how you look to other people is the most important thing in the world. So I remember all the time hearing from my mum, what will people think? But it wasn't just, oh, what will people think? It was like, oh my God, you know, the integrity of the family is at stake if you put a foot outside the line type thing. And, you know, the Victorian era was very much about appearances and how you look in society and conforming and all those really wonderful things that I don't agree with at all now. But for some reason my mother was the backbone of the family, and my father did what my mother said. So when I say my parents, what I mean is my mother. So my mother was very strict, and we could not breathe in the wrong way. I mean, and I'm not exaggerating when I say we knew where she was in the house all the time, and we knew what we could get away with. Well, see, I was an addict from the get-go. I'm pretty sure you don't turn into an addict. I think you're born with an addictive personality. And I know that if I would steal a cake or, you know, eat my face. My mum did all the cooking on a Sunday, and yeah, I would routinely just eat my way through it. And yeah, I think it was that, oh, sugar makes me go into an altered state, and that altered state was preferable to the panic that I felt most of the time. So yeah, sugar was a big thing for me growing up, sweets and cakes. And anyway, I don't know why I digressed there. What I was talking about was what we had to look like in public. So children are seen and not heard. You certainly don't lift your head above the parapet and say what you think. There was really, you know, just such a big pressure on us children to be perfect, which of course doesn't exist. And I'm describing this because I'm pretty sure most people watching this will understand this. Well, if you have loving parents and you're brought up in a happy household, perhaps not. But for us, we always knew that what the neighbours thought of us was the most important thing to my mum. And I'm going to call that denial. Denial that people have flaws, denial that people make mistakes, denial that, you know, we're human, for goodness sake. So one of the big issues with addictive behaviours, and I think I read somewhere there are 384 different addictions that you can be addicted to. The really obvious ones in society, alcohol, drugs, sex, you know, these are the ones that cause, you know, real harm to other people. But there's image management. I have to look perfect all the time. There's work, there's money, there's power, there's gambling, there's lack of money, there's, gosh, cleaning. It just, really, you can be addicted to anything you like. It's whether or not you have to do it. So a really good test for an alcoholic, for example, who doesn't believe that they're an alcoholic, is you say to them, yeah, you can have 2 drinks every night for 2 weeks. That's what you've got to stick to. 2 drinks every night for 2 weeks. An alcoholic can't do that. They might be able to do it for the first, maybe second time, and then the switch will flick, the switch will flick, and they will drink to oblivion before the 2 weeks is up, usually on about the 3rd or the 4th night. And that's how you show whether or not you're addicted to something. Do you absolutely have to have it? Now, my severe, and I mean severe, problem with denial and accepting that I was an alcoholic or I had any addictions is alcoholics to me were sitting on a park bench in a grubby Mac with a bottle in a paper bag, drinking from the bottle in the bag. And I wasn't like that. I was a really high functioning alcoholic. In fact, if I had a pound for every person that said to me, "You're an alcoholic," but we never noticed. No, you didn't. But that's because a lot of my drinking was done at home, on my own, or in any situation where I was able to drink freely. So for me, breaking that denial, and that's one of the biggest hurdles that you have to overcome if you're even going to get to a point where you're going to be able to recover, is you have to accept that that's what you are. And I am highly intelligent and very stubborn. I can be stubborn. And yeah, I just didn't want to believe it. And they asked me in the treatment centre, "Is anyone in your family an addict?" And I was like, "No, not at all." Of course, now, further down the line, I can see shopping addiction, addiction to worry, I can see control issues, that's very addictive, I can see a silent rager, there are many addicts in my family. And I asked Mum when I got out of treatment, "Is there any history of it in our family?" She's like, no. But then I found out a story from her about 3 years ago now, so 9 years into my recovery, that her grandfather didn't go to her mother's wedding because he was a nasty, violent alcoholic, and she got married without him. Okay, so there are alcoholics in our family. It does run in the family, because you tend to find that addictions run in families. So I got struck both families, so lucky me. But anyway, so for whatever reason, this lifetime I chose to be an alcoholic. And for me, alcohol was just coping with the horrendous feelings that were coming up from inside me that I just didn't understand. That's the truth. Now, I was in counselling at school, I remember. I had put myself for counselling in my 20s. I didn't touch the surface, basically. I didn't come anywhere near to what I needed to do. So I get on this plane, as I said at the end of the last video, and I turn up in this place in Kentucky in the middle of nowhere. You can't buy alcohol after 9 o'clock in the evening, and I'd got there really late, so I couldn't even have a drink my last night before going into treatment. But of course I didn't understand that that's why I was there. And in the first morning they wrote the word codependent on the board, and I was like, well, I don't know what that is, but I'm definitely not one of those. How wrong can you be? So I learned over the next 3 or 4 days that I was a chronic codependent, and everybody that's got addictive tendencies tends to have codependence running underneath the addiction. Codependence, I suppose the best way for me to describe it is, I don't think enough of myself that what you think of me is more important than what I think of me. So it's a whole range of behaviours that say you're more important than I am. And yeah, it's going to be a lifelong lesson for me to get over that, but my codependent behaviours are much better than they were. But of course in the beginning you have to learn what they are, and yeah, I think my way of dealing with the fact that they said you're an alcoholic, you're a shopping addict, you are a codependent, and gave me, I'm an overeater, what else? Yeah, various different things. And I was just like, right, if I learn enough, I can get through this. And, well, truth be known, that's not true. But that's what I hung on to for the first 6 months or so. So breaking through the denial was probably more of a challenge for them than it was for me, because I just didn't believe them. But anyway, I was there for 6 weeks. I think I stayed in the treatment centre in Kentucky, and then I had to fly home. And one of the hardest things I think that I discovered, now the reason I went to Kentucky was because it was about a tenth of the price of going to treatment in the UK. So even with the cost of the, you know, the airfare and everything, it was still way cheaper than going into treatment in the UK. And there were some other people from England, and we stayed in touch for a little while, but as with all things, that's petered out a little bit now. But yeah, and then I had to go into a secondary unit because I went just a little bit mad. I think that's fair to say. I'd been told that I'd been severely abused, and I really didn't understand that, and I didn't know what to do with it, and I couldn't unpack it in any way. And there was a guy that I'd been seeing as a counsellor before, who had agreed that I should go into treatment, and he kind of quietly suggested that he worked in this place, and he thought it might be quite good for me. I went in there expecting to stay in for a week, and I stayed in for nearly 9 months. I think that's true, maybe 7 months. Anyway, a long time. As I, unpacked a lot of new information that was being thrown at me. And to be really honest, when you stop drinking or when you stop the behaviour, that's when you find out why you were drinking in the first place. And I did some really hardcore therapy, counselling, psychodynamic stuff, just anything. I was really desperate to get to the bottom of this. I met some really famous people in my recovery, which was exciting. And the don't even know that I'm lying bit really is interesting because, you know, gradually over time, a little bit more was revealed to me each time. So it's not like they said, these are all your problems, go work on those. It was like, I think it took me 1.5 years to discover something really deep and meaningful that sent me through a loop, because it was just too big for me to deal with. But all that time that I've been in therapy, I really was not aware that this was a possibility. As soon as it was suggested to me, I knew that it was true, and I knew that I needed to work on it. And I think there's a little bit of me that, you know, I've lost a lot of friends to their addictions. When you get into recovery, you're really vulnerable, and it is really hard. I'm lucky in that I was given a really strong personality, but I'm also really tenacious, and I was so frightened of relapsing, and I mean terrified, because I knew that I didn't have a second recovery in me. And I'm not saying that I'm judging anyone who's relapsed, I'm just saying it was not a possibility for me, and still isn't. And that's why I think I'm still here. I slowly and surely started uncovering the pain, diving deep into the motivators for my appalling behaviours in some instances, and gradually started, as I unpicked the pain, that's where I started coming to life again and being reborn. So denial is definitely a huge subject when you're looking at addictions, addictive behaviours, disruptive behaviours, any behaviours that you use to cope with what life has thrown at you, I suppose. So I think I'm going to leave it there. That's already nearly 15 minutes. So denial is a really huge part of recovering from addiction. So it's about being really, really truthful, honest, and being willing to, you know, look at your stuff. And it's not easy. And you need a great support network around you. You need great counsellors. And you need to, I needed to, you don't need to, but I needed AA groups and other groups, codependency groups. I needed people who were around me that knew what I was going through, and you know, why my life had ended up so awful, and could just be there to listen when I needed to be listened to, and I did the same for them, so it's wonderful. So this is the end of video number 2 in recovering from addictions. This video was called Denial. The next video that I'm going to record is going to be called Acceptance, and I'm imagining that you can imagine what it takes to be able to accept that. So the willingness to change. So thank you for listening, and if any of this has triggered you, or you really think that you need some help or guidance or healing, then please do go to spiritualgrowthtools.co.uk. Thanks for listening. Bye now.